Today we are talking about one of the most frustrating parts of this process.
And I saw a lot of posts about this. So I figured it'd be nice to talk about one of these posts.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to CFP Talks. My name is Joe Nissim. With me, as always, is the incomparable Mr. Raman Singh.
Comparable Mr. Ramen Singh. What's going on, man? How are you?
Look, man, this is brown power over here, okay?
Brown, Brown, I
Brown
feel
excellence.
I feel pretty good, man, about how the results came off of this cycle. You know the funniest thing is during one of our podcasts, I said we said Christmas in July, and I was like, man, it'd be
Yeah.
nice to see all these CFP students pass the exam that we're tutoring. And we went, what, 6 for 6?
6 for 6. We're going to talk about that on probably one or two different episodes. We're going to kind of do a deep dive into our class, but we had a really successful class.
That was that was amazing.
Amazing.
That was I did some of my independent one-on-ones too. I think I had a pretty good run rate out of that, but six
Yeah.
for six, damn.
Yeah. I mean, and it just goes to show that when you mix proper instruction with proper fundamentals, and then we let our students kind of do the hard work and do so in a really good environment that's both independent and supportive, it kind of you get these like perfect ingredients to build this like perfect cake,
Yeah.
right? And I think that's kind of the hard part in building any kind of a group class of any kind is, and you know it because now you've been teaching group classes, and it's really different than doing anything one
Oh,
on one because
yeah.
it's just you and the student, and we can grill our students and we can kind of bring them along and motivate them. And we don't have to worry about the influences of other students, but we also lose the influence of other students.
Yeah.
I'm much better working out with other people than I am by myself. I
Right.
find it way harder. One other person gets me really motivated.
Yeah. It's kind of like climbing the Everest,
Hmm.
right? Whenever, if you see any of these movies about climbing the Everest, usually they end up being bad. Somebody's
Yeah.
dying, but the whole
Somebody
con
always dies on
yeah,
Everest.
somebody always in the movies, but in
Like a
reality, so I mean, everybody's climbing
cursed
the Everest,
mountain.
right? But thing is, when you notice, right? So you have the leader, right? Who does this for a living, who gets paid for this, right? And he sets up a group, but yeah, the leader's all the way at the front and leading the people, but it's the people in the back or in the middle who they're the ones who are supporting the people in the back and pushing them forward. And I feel like our class is something like that where, you get the strong students and we see it like, okay, this person's strong. And then we see somebody like, okay, like this person needs a little bit more work. But over this entire cycle, as they're working with each other and as they're like getting to know each other and they spend so much time together, they start learning from each other and start getting better at it. And I feel like that happened with our just this previous cycle alone, where some of the people got pushed up or they got elevated
Yep.
because of the way everybody else was performing in the
Yeah.
class.
And other people got pulled slower. We had students that, even though they were really, really bright, were moving a little bit too fast. They were trying to rush through things. And
I know exactly who you're talking about.
right, but what I'm saying is like you see this in every single group where you have like somebody's like, I'm going, and then you have somebody who's, and then you kind of look at the other person who's going slow, and you look them right over, and you're going, oh, I can't learn anything from you, and that's nonsense. You can learn a lot from them because what they're showing you is like sometimes going slow ends up being the better path.
Yeah.
And so, when you get a fast person and a slow person and they kind of balance each other out, I think it's something that gets lost in modern learning is because, with the exception of elementary, middle, and high school, and I know even some colleges are now doing remote stuff, but really outside of high school is the last time that you are forced to learn in a group.
Right.
And for a lot of us, we did most of our best learning in that environment, and then we lose it with Zoom and YouTube and 100 other things that allow you to individually at home in your boxers at 9 p.m. at night. But the flip side of convenience is that you tend to lose all that other good stuff. right? You get to lose and part of it is listening.
Yeah.
You get to listen to other people and hear how they're, and even if they're processing the information incorrectly, it gives you the opportunity to figure out one together, but two, it makes you sharper because you got to go, wait, that's not right. And if you can't pull that out, then you don't really know the information.
Right.
And over time, what we saw is exactly what you said is our entire group elevated beautifully, where we had stronger students pulling up other students. We had some students pulling students back and slowing them down. We had our really detailed students taking some of those students who are like, I'm a visionary, I'm a big picture person. And you had some of these people who are like, I'm a detail person. And they started to complement each other. So we saw all kinds of different strengths and weaknesses tend to work together.
Yeah. 100%.
And the thing that I really loved hearing was when I chatted with everybody over the last couple of days is oh, I was studying with so and so from the time class ended to the exam. Oh, I studied 6 or 7 times with this person. So we saw it carry outside of class, and now they were independent and replicating what we were doing in class. And obviously, that's the best compliment that we can be given is you take what we did in class and then replicate it on your own. So
Yeah. 100%. 100%. So with that being said, Joe, what's on the agenda today?
today we are talking about one of the most frustrating parts of this process is I'm studying, and it feels like I'm like that hamster on a wheel where all I do is study, but I'm not actually going anywhere. Like I feel like I'm running, but nothing is sticking. I'm not making any forward progress. And initially, I think that's expected. I think you do it after a while and it tends to get really frustrating.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. 100%.
So,
It's funny you say that. As I spend so much time on Reddit, and I
yeah.
saw a lot of posts about this. So I figured, like, it'd be nice to talk about one of these posts. So basically, this person wrote a post. CFP feels impossible, and I get
Mm.
it. Like it's not for the lighthearted, right? It's not for the lighthearted. But what this person said was, I've been studying nonstop since the summertime. I've been through the Q banks a few times, scoring mid 60s in the CFP board practice exams. I scored 48% on the exam readiness, 65% overall. And this stuff is just too hard, man. I'm thinking of quitting and reevaluating my career. And I see a lot of people like go down there like, should I be even doing this?
Uh,
Nothing should be this hard. It feels impossible. I'm already out 7 grand plus taking days off my job, so probably out like 12K so far. I feel burnout. I feel emotional. I feel like crap. I know I'd be the best CFP ever, but I'm not a test taker or a school person. I'll be pulling out about 150 hours over the next 3 weeks, and I've put about 1,000 hours already. I mean, you could tell just like frustration in this person.
oof.
Yeah, like you're putting in all these hours, and the fact that you're still not feeling confident, that means there is a problem of retaining the material,
Hmm.
and this is what we want to talk about today to people is it's about retention. You're putting in the hours. If you're putting in the hours
And if
and
you're putting in 1,000 hours,
1,000 hours,
holy shit.
that means
1,000 hours?
yeah, that means you're doing something wrong at this point.
Maybe, I mean, that feels like an exaggeration.
Yeah,
How many
it's
hours are,
also
let's do some math. 24 by 7 by 52. Okay, there's 8,000 hours in a year, but Jesus, 1,000 hours?
yeah.
That's
I
crazy.
mean, if you do like a 40-hour work week, basically. So if you do 40-hour work week, 5 days a week times.
That means you're studying like again, if you're studying 40 hours a week, that means you're studying 25 weeks. But the more realistic is you're studying 20. So that means you've studied 20 hours a week for an entire year.
Yeah, I mean, then once again, the question is, how are you studying and why are you not retaining this information?
I mean, something is really broken here.
Yeah, something is really broken here.
Really broken. Like, and of course, you feel burned out. You studied 1,000 hours. I
Yeah.
mean, if this is even remotely accurate, that they've studied 1,000 hours, that means that, and if you've been consistent for an entire year, that's an insane amount of hours.
Well, first off,
That,
if you're spending an hour studying to take the CFP exam, and maybe that's where problem number one is.
Raman, I just don't even understand how somebody could study 1,000 hours.
Study properly, no.
Like if you studied an hour a day every day and never miss, you'd study 365 hours.
Yeah.
So that means if you study 2 hours a day, you're at
So you're studying
740
about like 2.5 hours a day on an average
for an
and for the
entire
entire
year.
year.
Something's broken.
Yeah, something is broken. And and here's the thing, and the crazy thing is now this brings me to, my second thing is I'm seeing like these people are failing these tests or they just failed these tests and they're just like blowing up Reddit and they're like, oh, I just took Danko and I failed the test, or I just took Dalton and I failed the test. Should I change my exam provider? And everybody's like, and it's just so funny, like reading these messages. So people who are like the Danko crowd, they'll say Danko, 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 but the guy just failed using Danko. Or people who
Right.
are the Dalton crowd, they're like Dalton, 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 but the guy just used Dalton to fail the test. It's kind of
Right.
like, is it really the material that you want to change, or is it like your study habits you want to change?
Yeah, well, I think you put a good point there is like, when you read even the remainder of the threads, like this is like even the responses are kind of crazy. Because and there's some good advice in here and there's some bad advice in here. Not all of it's good or not all of it's bad, but if you've put in 1,000 hours, the question that I have to ask is first and foremost, where did you get that number? And then second of all, what is your study structure?
Yeah, what's
Because
your study structure? Yeah,
because it could very well be that you're feeling burnt out. Anybody who's studying that much time, I get it. You're gonna be burned out. There's no way you're not. Especially if you
right.
have a full-time job. Like you know what that's like, especially with a kid now. Like w- you're sacrificing sleep, you're sacrificing work, something else is getting sacrificed to be able to do that.
Yeah,
My social when I was studying for CFA, I had two priorities. It was go to work and study. And my social life suffered, my gym life suffered, all of those other things suffered because that had to become the priority. The question is what is your study structure? Because if you're not retaining something, and we're not saying that you're going to understand complicated tax code inside of 2 weeks. It's not what I'm trying to sell anybody here. But I'm saying is that if you're not starting to gradually understand things where you can see visible improvement, both from the standpoint of a score and also your comfort with the material, and you're not getting that inside of a month, you're doing something wrong.
100%. 100%. And I think this is where you had mentioned before we started recording is how you learn,
Hmm.
right? You mentioned about, I mean, I'd love for you to chime in a little bit more about that, but you mentioned about passive learning versus active learning. So can you
Yeah.
comment a little bit about that?
Yeah, for sure. I think this is one of the biggest mistakes that people make is if I'm looking at something that's difficult, the hardest thing to do is jump in and do it.
Yeah,
Okay. And if you're intimidated by the material, there's kind of two ways that our defense mechanisms go up as humans, especially when it comes to learning. Either I'm going to just kind of keep reading the book over and over again and go, I don't get it. I don't get it. So I'm going to read it again. I don't get it. I'm going to read it again. Nobody has ever learned how to do anything by just looking at it.
right,
You got to get your hands dirty and you got to get moving, right? So if I want to learn how to do a pull up at the gym and all I did was watch YouTube videos on doing a pull up, it's great passive learning. I'll probably know all the things that somebody's doing wrong when I watch them, but it doesn't mean that I know how to do a pull up.
right,
I got to feel what it's like to pull my elbows down and what muscles are going to be used, and if my shoulders are forward, I got to be able to identify, but if my shoulders are back and down, so I can actually use the right muscles and where my legs should be and how my feet should be positioned. You're not going to know that until you get up on the pull-up bar.
right,
And guess what?
100%.
The first time you get on the pull-up bar, it fucking stinks.
I
And
remember that.
and we all know it. It stinks and it's embarrassing. Maybe it makes you feel bad. So I go back to watching YouTube videos, or I do something that really doesn't move the needle, i.e., I do some other exercise that's not a pull-up. The easiest way to get a pull-up is to try doing pull-ups a couple times a week. Maybe you're doing it assisted, but you're working gradually and saying, hey, I'm going to start with this assistance of like a band, like a green, big, heavy, fat band that helps me out a lot. And then in a week from now, I'm going to go down from that band to the next one. Oh, it's going to be challenging at first, but then I'm going to get it. And then I'm going to graduate eventually to where I don't you have to use any assistance and I can do it myself.
Yeah. So Joe, how would you translate that into studying for the CFP?
It's a great idea. Great question. When it comes to active and passive learning, things like reading, watching a video, or watching a demonstration, watching the teacher do it, all passive. Those are great things. You can't learn a subject without doing the passive learning. Until you're problem solving, you're never going to learn the material.
Yeah.
So things like your flashcards are a halfway mark between active and passive learning,
Right.
right? They're going to cause you to retrieve the material, but it's in a very specific context. We also start to get the cadence of our flashcards.
Right.
But when it comes to problem solving, especially open answer, case studies, your multiple choice, remember, is a testing mechanism, but multiple choice will also help here. But if you're not doing, if you're not discussing, if you're not explaining, if you're not reasoning, if you're not connecting, that's active learning.
Yeah.
It's that is my version of getting up on the pulling bar and using my muscles to pull. If you're getting a multiple choice question, you're clicking on the button, that's not learning,
Right.
because then I'm going to see the answer and I never had to think about it. So, what are the exercises that force you to think and connect the material that you've read to solving a problem?
Oh, that's fantastic. And it's funny how you say like retrieval it'll help you retrieve the information. And once you're able to retrieve that information, then that leads you into, recognizing and be able to problem solve more strategically because you're like, okay, I have the information. Now I recognize this on the exam or the test, and not just finding the right answer, but it's just like understanding everything around the question,
That's right.
which is gonna complement everything, right? Now you're gonna be like, okay, wow, like I remember this stuff and I'm looking through these questions. I know why this is incorrect and why this is going, this is correct. And now you're able to execute basically,
Yeah.
you know?
And recognition of keywords is really great. And this is something that you wrote down, which I love, which is, you got to learn actively. So if you're spending all your time reading and watching videos and watching demonstrations, but you're not actually actively solving problems or doing case studies or explaining it or teaching it to other people, you're never going to learn it. It just doesn't stick,
Right.
right? And then when you come down to the second part of this, which is you have to prioritize retrieval over recognition. The number one thing that multiple choice helps you do is recognize two
Recognize.
things that go together.
Yep.
Right.
Like I
And it,
remember this. I recognize this. And
and it's like doing a crossword puzzle with the hint button.
yeah.
Yeah, I have a general, I know generally where to go, but I don't know what to do when I get there.
Right.
Right. And I think this is the biggest mistake that we see with multiple choice is this, and you know
Yeah.
this better than most. Oh, I saw uh section 162, so I know that goes with an S corp. So if A has an LLC in there and B has an LLP and C is an S corp and D is a C corp, I know it's S corp. What do you do when A, B, and C all say S corp for different
Yeah.
reasons? And that's
Exactly.
where everybody on the exam who doesn't pass goes, "Oh, I got screwed."
Yeah. I got it down to the last two.
And I just picked the wrong one every single time. I picked the wrong one every single time. Well, again,
Yep.
can are you retrieving or are you recognizing? Because
Right.
again, you know, when I was a kid, my old man would like pop open the hood and we'd have like our Saturday mechanical thing. What's this? What's this? Can you imagine every time my old man, every time he pointed at something, he's like, is this the oil cap or is this the carburetor? And I was like, no, that's the oil cap because I can see the oil. Well, again, now you've given me the answer. Why would I remember it next week? If you're going to give me the answer next week and all I have to do is pick between the two, it's easy.
Right, exactly.
But if he's sitting there like this with his arms folded, and I'd never wanted to disappoint my old man, but he's sitting there and goes, "What is this?" And I can't say it. He's like, "You don't know it."
Right.
And it's simple. You don't know it.
You're not able to retrieve the info. You recognize it when it's in front of you, but you can't retrieve that info.
That's it. So if you're doing a lot of recognizing, you need to turn that into retrieval because if
Yeah.
you can't pull the right thing at the right time, and if you're starting to do things like, can I use this here? Now you're starting to connect it.
Yes. And it's funny you say that. Like so one of my one-on-one students who didn't end up passing the test, and he said, Raman, you know, in during our sessions, you would tell me that the exam's not gonna, give you the direct, crut as the answer, but it's gonna lead you into an answer choice where you're gonna like, I think that sounds like crat or that sounds like crut. And that's where once again, the retrieval of knowledge comes in. Because you might recognize the word crat, oh, this is a crat. But if the answer choice does not say crat, how are you gonna find the answer? If the answer choices are saying an action of what a crat is,
Mm.
but you can't define what a crat is because you can't retrieve that information, then you're about to get your ass kicked on the test.
We were in an office hours probably 3, 4 weeks ago, and you were chatting with one of the students in that office hour, and they were asking you something about multiple choice, and you go, it's good to know the answer, but it's even more important to know why the other things are not the answer.
Yeah,
And that's exactly where retrieval leads you to. It can't be this because of this, this, and this.
yeah,
It can't be this. And sometimes on the exam, you're not going to retrieve every single answer,
sure.
but you can start to get yourself in a position to succeed if you can eliminate some answers because these are absolutely out of the question.
Right. It just helps, right? It helps. I mean, at the end of the day, your goal is to find the right answer, and the easiest way you could get there is by knowing what you know and retrieving the information. And if you could do that, it's going to help us tremendously rather than you playing that guessing game of, oh, I'm between A and C, I'm
I
between A and D.
I agree. And I think kind of the thing that ties this together in a nice, neat little bow is the repetition.
Yeah. So, Joe, that Reddit post, the guy said, "Well, I've spent thousands of hours, right, studying." Obviously, this guy spent a lot of time studying. Let's just give him the benefit of that doubt. He spent 1,000 hours of studying. What would you say, people who are retaking this test, what would you say how they should be studying? Like when it comes to the study part, like would you say that they should be spending 1,000 hours, or would you say they should be studying, smarter and be more diligent about those hours?
Yeah, I think for anybody who's in that, I urge you to challenge yourself. Because what that's telling me is that if you've studied 1,000 hours and you're not retaining, there's something broken in your study system and you're doing way too much to get out way too little.
Yeah.
So I'm going to urge you is study 2 hours a day. And
Yeah.
if you can't get it done in 2 hours a day, you're trying to do too much.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen people say, like, I'm studying 8 hours. It's kind of like you can't. You
I
think you
agree.
are studying for eight
Right.
hours, but you're not.
Right.
And I even break that down further. If you want to study 2 hours or 3 hours a day, break it down into little micro sections, right? Like I study for 30 minutes this topic, I took a little quiz, take a 5 minute break, and then study again. And that way you don't have to feel like, oh, I'm studying for 2 hours or 3 hours altogether. Break it into little micro sessions, right?
Yep.
So 25, 30, 25, 5, 25, 5, 25, 5, 25, 5, and do it 4 times in the next 3 hour, 4 hour period,
Yep.
basically.
I know people who go to the gym that I go to, and I'm not trying to pump smoke up my own ass here, but they are 15 years younger than me and cannot lift a quarter of what I lift. Okay. And I'll tell you what, and these are people that are they're not unfit. They're spending 3 or 4 hours in the gym. But then you watch them when they're in the gym for 3 or 4 hours and they do a little work and then they're breaking, they're chatting, they're on the phone, they're texting for 30 minutes. I'm like, yeah, you spent 44 hours at the gym. You worked out for about 45 minutes.
Yeah, right.
Why don't you just come in, get down to business for 45 minutes, and let the intensity take over.
Right.
And that's what I think is the smarter part of this is that if your studying can't be done in 3 hours, you're moving way too slow.
Right.
Or you're trying to do way too much in a day, or you're trying to squeeze too much. The consistency is it. Try to get to the gym 5 days a week is the same thing with your studying. You're trying to study 5 or 6 days a week. You have to make your study session shorter because you study 8 hours, and you know this, Ramen. You study 8 hours on Sunday, Monday is a
You're,
complete flop.
yeah, you're cooked. You're cooked.
There's no studying on Monday
Yeah.
that's gonna actually accomplish anything of value.
Right. Exactly.
That's
Be
it.
diligent about it, right? Like have a good process. Study smarter rather than, studying longer. Just because you studied longer doesn't mean that
Anything. It just means you studied longer.
yeah. It just means you studied longer. That's it.
That's
Doesn't
it.
mean that you retain material better or you're gonna have a better shot at passing the exam.
That's right. Be the person who is so laser focused and let that dictate how much you study because I'll tell you, man, when you're really studying, you're going at it. And anybody who's really, you can't study more than 3 hours in a day.
Yeah.
A
Oh,
full-time job. That's what
oh
I'm
yeah.
assuming everybody has a full-time thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, even like right now when I'm studying, I spend about 2 hours and I'm like, I'm fried. I don't even want to go any further. You know, I'll just stop studying at that point. Like I'm gonna study the next day.
Yeah, and here's the thing that everybody makes the mistake with. So what if my 2 hours of studying turns to three? I'm studying, right? And you're missing a big point here. Every minute that you spend studying additionally is time that you're not resting.
Yeah,
That means you're less sharp for the next day.
which is very important. Your rest time is very important. I mean, I've had like canceled tutoring one-on-one sessions with students because they were so burnt out. I'm like, nope,
Yep.
not worth meeting today. Like you need to go rest up. And I know that resting helps. It's a fact.
Yep. One of the guys in our program was going too hard, and we go
Yeah.
take a night off.
Yeah.
And he ended up taking 3 nights off, which
Yeah.
was even better. But he came back. He's like, "That's the best thing I did." He's like, "I was going. You were absolutely right. I went too hard." He was like, "It was so refreshing to just come home, chill out, do nothing, and go to bed early 3 nights in a row."
Right.
And it's amazing. 3 or 4 nights of sleep makes a big difference.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Joe, so I guess we could lead with tip of the week and wrap it up then.
Yeah.
So
What is Ramen's tip of the
the
week?
tip of the week is so I call it the 2-to-1 rule.
Okay.
All right. So basically, a lot of people end up spending too much time on practice questions. I finished, I talked to somebody, he's like, I did 5,000 questions. I'm like, Jesus Christ. Like, no, actually, this guy said 10,000 question. I'm like, what? I'm like, you don't do that. So the 2-to-1 rule is going to help you prevent from, making those mistakes. So basically, for every 30 minutes of quizzes that you take or questions that you take, you need to try to spend an hour reviewing those questions. Hence why the 2-to-1 comes in, 1 to 2, however you want to call that,
I like
right?
it.
So if you're gonna take let's just say a 25 question test quiz, and you end up spending 30 minutes on it, then you want to try to spend the next hour reviewing that quiz and reviewing everything about how the quiz is structured, meaning how was the question worded? What was the question trying to trick me in a way where it had like a double negative entendre of some kind? How were the answer choices written? Were the answer choices did they have some sort of negative thing into it? Also, if there were numbers or percentages or whatever it was those numbers incorrect? If so, what's the correct number around that? Right? So something says 30 days and like, nope, it's not 30 days, it's 45 days. You
Mhm.
need to look through all the answer choices and validate if A is incorrect, what would have been the correct answer choice? What words had to be changed for it to become a correct answer choice? And go with all the answer choices. So play that the game because thing is it's gonna allow you to A, slow down, B, it's gonna allow you to truly look at how these questions are being worded, right? And C, it'll allow you to go back into, you know, retaining your knowledge base and build up on that.
And more importantly, think about it this way. How in the world can you get a question right if you don't even know why you got it wrong the first time?
Yeah.
And that is the takeaway is like Ramen just gave you gold. How's it written? Why did I get it right? Why did I get it wrong? Is it in the wording or do I not understand this concept? And if you're not sitting there going through and spending that level of detail and squeezing that juice out of the orange, you're leaving tons on the table and you're going to have to make it up by doing a lot more questions.
Right.
Save yourself the heartache and the grief and just do it the first time correctly.
Yeah. 100%. 100%.
So, with that being said, let's close out here, and we know what you need to do to break this cycle of just kind of studying endlessly and end yourself in this. I've studied 1,000 hours, I've studied 300 hours, I've studied 400 hours. Don't get yourself into that point. If you're truly studying hard correctly and with the intention of retention, it's going to be uncomfortable. Studying for retention is very uncomfortable. Studying for passively, it's very comfortable. I just read the book. It's great.
Right.
I watched the video. Oh, look how good, Joe looks so handsome today in his video. Oh, thanks, guys. But you're not really learning anything until you start putting pen to paper. You start solving, you start explaining. So, Ramen, what are we talking about next week in our next episode?
Ooh.
To
So
the
we're
next
gonna dive
episode.
into we're gonna dive into the flow of multi-step questions. And I know these questions could get very, very, very frustrating. So I'm hoping we'll throw on a question and we'll get us discuss that. And but we'll definitely talk about how to properly look at that flow of that question and attack that question because I know that's one of the biggest challenges on the exam.
So, when you say multi-step, do you also mean multi-knowledge topic?
Oh yeah, I mean that's the key. I feel like it's not just the time value of money, step one,
Ooh.
two, three, four. That's whatever. No, we're talking about what matters, which is the multi-knowledge topics.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm looking forward to that. That's going to be real fun. All right, everybody. We hope you enjoyed this episode. With any questions, comments, or concerns, reach out to Robin and I myself. Make sure to like and subscribe to this channel, and we will see you guys next week when we'll break down those questions.
Yes,
Take it
let's
easy,
go.
everybody.
All right.